She simply sits and waits. And in that stillness, something strange begins to happen. The laughter fades slightly, not because anyone has stopped it, but because her stillness makes it feel slightly wrong. Like laughing in a library. Like making noise in a place that is asking for quiet. A woman near the back of the room, a woman who has said nothing since the girl walked in, notices this. She watches the girl. She watches the mother standing just to the side of the stage. And she notices something no one else has paused long enough to notice. The mother is smiling. Not nervously. Not apologetically. She is smiling the way someone smiles when they are watching something unfold exactly the way they always knew it would. The woman near the back leans toward her husband and says quietly, "Look at the mother." Her husband looks. He frowns slightly. "What about her?" "She's not worried," the woman says. He shrugs. She probably doesn't know any better. But the woman keeps watching. Because there is a particular kind of confidence that cannot be faked. It does not perform itself. It does not announce itself. It simply exists, in the set of the shoulders, in the steadiness of the eyes, in the slight curve of a mouth that knows something the rest of the room does not. And the mother has it. All of it. A guest moves through the crowd toward her. A man in his 50s, silver-haired, with the particular ease of someone who has spent decades in rooms like this. He stops beside the mother and looks at her with barely concealed amusement. "You're not nervous," he says. It is not quite a question. The mother glances at him briefly. Then her eyes return to her daughter. "No," she says. "You do know," the man says, gesturing around the room with his champagne glass, "that this piano costs more than most people's houses." The mother is quiet for a moment. Then she says, simply and without a trace of defensiveness, "Music has a way of surprising people." The man laughs softly. He opens his mouth to say something else. But then the girl at the piano raises her hands above the keys. The room goes quiet. Completely. Instantly. The way a room goes quiet when something is about to happen that it does not yet understand. The girl's small hands hover above the keys. One breath. Two. And then her fingers come down. The first notes are soft. Almost too soft for the size of the room. A single melodic line, rising slowly from the lower register of the piano, moving upward note by note with the delicate, unhurried patience of someone who has done this 10,000 times in a small room and is simply doing it again now. Some guests exchange glances. A woman raises an eyebrow. Someone near the back audibly exhales through his nose, the particular sound of a man deciding his suspicion was correct. "Simple," Victor murmurs to the man standing beside him. Predictably simple. The man beside him nods. They both reach for their glasses. But then the left hand enters. It does not enter gently. It arrives with a weight and precision that does not belong in the hands of a child sitting at a piano for the first time in front of an audience. The bass line moves in counterpoint to the melody, not just accompaniment, not just background, but a second voice, an equal voice, speaking beneath the first one with its own rhythm, its own urgency. The man beside Victor lowers his glass slightly. The woman who had been watching the mother stops watching the mother and turns toward the stage. The melody shifts. It climbs. The right hand begins moving with increasing speed, not recklessly, but precisely. Each note landing exactly where it belongs, exactly when it belongs there, with the kind of technical control that takes most pianists 15 years to develop. The left hand keeps pace. Then it surpasses it. The piece opens up like a door swinging wide, and behind that door is not a child's recital piece, not a simple melody dressed up with minor chords, but something vast, something structural, something built from the kind of musical architecture that requires not just skill but understanding. At table 7, a man in a dark navy suit sits up straight. His name is Daniel Reeves. He is one of the most decorated classical pianists in the country. He has performed at Carnegie Hall. He has recorded 17 albums. He has sat on the jury of international piano competitions for 11 years. He sits up straight. And then he leans forward. His wife notices. Daniel? He does not answer. He is staring at the girl on the stage with an expression his wife has never seen on his face in 30 years of marriage. Not admiration. Not surprise. Recognition. The music continues to build. The guests who had been talking have stopped talking. The guests who had been moving have stopped moving. The servers have stopped moving between tables. Even the bartender behind the long marble counter at the far end of the room has set down the glass he was polishing and turned to face the stage. The girl's hands move across the keys with a fluency that is beginning to make people uncomfortable, not in a bad way, but in the way that extraordinary things make ordinary people uncomfortable. The way seeing something you cannot explain makes the ground feel slightly less certain beneath your feet. Victor Kang's smile is still on his face. But it has changed. It is no longer the smile of a man enjoying a joke. It is the face of a man who has not yet admitted to himself that the joke is over. He sets his champagne on the nearest table. Slowly. The melody reaches a passage of startling complexity, a rapid sequence of ascending runs in the right hand while the left hand holds a rhythmic pattern beneath it, the two parts moving at different speeds without ever losing each other, weaving together with a precision that makes several guests turn toward each other with expressions they cannot quite articulate. Daniel Reeves pushes his chair back slightly. He does not stand. Not yet. But his body has moved involuntarily toward the music, toward the stage, toward the small girl with the white ribbon in her hair who is doing something that he, a man who has devoted his life to this instrument, finds himself struggling to categorize. What is she playing? His wife whispers. He shakes his head slowly. Not because he doesn't know, but because he needs to hear more before he says the name out loud. Before he commits to what he thinks he is hearing. Because if he is right, if this is what he thinks it is, then the implications of a child playing this piece, in this room, tonight, are something he is not yet ready to put into words. The music swells. The room continues to transform around it. A guest near the window, a woman who had been photographing her champagne glass for her social media, lowers her phone. A man who had been checking his messages beneath the table lets the phone go dark. Two women who had been whispering to each other fall silent mid-sentence. And across the room, the silver-haired man who had spoken to the mother turns slowly away from the stage and looks at her. She is standing exactly where she was. She has not moved. She is watching her daughter with that same quiet, steady smile. And now the silver-haired man is not amused. He is unsettled. Because the confidence he saw in her face 10 minutes ago he had dismissed as ignorance. He is no longer dismissing it. He moves back through the crowd toward her. He stops beside her again. This time he does not have a patronizing comment ready. He stands quietly beside her for a moment, listening to the music, watching the girl. Then he says, quietly this time, "Where did she study?" The mother does not look at him. "At home," she says. "With whom?" A pause. "Her father." The silver-haired man nods slowly, as if that explains something. Then he realizes it raises more questions than it answers, and he turns back toward the stage. Victor Kang has moved. He has stepped away from the cluster of guests near the bar and is standing alone now, closer to the stage than before. He is not smiling anymore. His arms are at his sides. His expression is difficult to read, not because it is neutral, but because it contains several things at once, and none of them are the things his expression usually contains. His assistant, a young woman named Ji-hyun, appears at his shoulder. "Shall I have them escorted out, sir? After the piece ends?" Victor does not answer immediately. He is watching the girl's hands. He watches the left hand in particular. There is something about the movement of the left hand, a particular reaching gesture in the lower octaves, a specific way the wrist drops at the end of certain phrases, that is pulling at something deep in his memory. Something old. Something he has not thought about in years. "Sir?" Ji-hyun says again. "No," Victor says. His voice is quieter than usual. "No." Leave them. Ji-hyun blinks. She looks at the stage. She looks back at Victor. She has worked for this man for 6 years, and she has learned to recognize the different textures of his silence. This silence is new. She steps back. The music moves into its next passage, slower now, more deliberate, each note carrying more weight than the last. The melody descends from its highest point and begins to move through a series of harmonic progressions so sophisticated that Daniel Reeves, at his table, closes his eyes briefly. Not from boredom. From the opposite of boredom. He closes his eyes because sometimes the only way to hear something fully is to take away everything else. And when he opens them again, his expression has changed completely. He stands up. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. He simply stands, the way a person stands when remaining seated is no longer an option, when something has happened that the body responds to before the mind has finished processing it. His wife looks up at him. He does not look back at her. He is looking at the girl on the stage. And across the room, Victor Kang is looking at the same thing. But Victor is not thinking about the music anymore. Victor is thinking about a name. A name he buried a long time ago. A name that is now clawing its way back up through 15 years of deliberate forgetting, carried on the back of a melody that only one person in the world ever played exactly like this. He turns. He looks at the mother. She is already looking at him. She does not look away. And she is still smiling. The piece moves into its third movement. And if the first movement was a door opening, and the second was the room beyond it expanding, the third is something else entirely. The third is a reckoning. The tempo shifts. The right hand takes a sweeping, almost orchestral line, the kind of melodic statement that is not meant for a small room, not meant for 40 people sitting at white linen tables. It is meant for a concert hall, for 1,000 people, for a silence so deep the music can fill it completely. And yet here, in this ballroom, with its chandeliers and its canapes and its $20,000 table settings, the music fills the room entirely. Because the room has become silent enough to let it. Daniel Reeves is standing. No one has told him to sit down. No one has looked at him strangely. Because at the tables around him, 2 other people have also quietly risen from their chairs without fully realizing they have done so. The girl's face is completely calm. She is not performing. That is what is striking people now, the ones who have been watching long enough to understand what they are seeing. She is not leaning into the music with theatrical intensity. She is not closing her eyes with exaggerated feeling. Her face is focused, yes, but it is the focus of someone who is not working hard to do something difficult. It is the focus of someone doing something that is simply second nature. Her foot reaches the sustain pedal. She presses it at exactly the right moment. The chord blooms. It fills the room from the stage to the back wall to the ceiling and back again, and for one full measure it simply hangs in the air, not fading, not diminishing, sustained by the pedal and by the absolute silence of 60 people who have stopped breathing at the same time without coordinating it. Then the melody returns. Quieter now. More intimate. Moving back down through the registers with the particular tenderness of a musical idea returning home after a long journey. And that is when Victor Kang begins to walk. He walks slowly, from his position near the bar, across the wide floor of the ballroom, toward the stage. He does not announce himself. He does not ask people to move. The crowd parts for him without being told, the way it always does, and he moves through it in a straight line toward the piano. He stops about 10 feet from the stage. He stands there, watching. And now his expression is not ambiguous. Now it carries only one thing, and that thing is something Victor Kang has not shown in public in a very long time, because men like Victor Kang understand that what you show is what people use against you. What Victor Kang's face shows now is grief. Not sadness. Not regret. Something older and heavier, the particular expression of a man who is being forced to look at something he put away a long time ago, something he convinced himself did not matter anymore, and is now discovering that the only reason it stopped mattering was because he stopped letting himself look at it. The music continues. The girl does not look at him. She has not looked at any of them since she sat down. The audience, the chandeliers, the servers, the famous guests, none of them exist for her right now. Only the piano exists. Only the music exists. Only the thing her father put inside her exists, playing itself out through her fingers in this room full of people who laughed at her dress. Daniel Reeves takes 3 steps toward the stage. He stops. He is close enough now to see her hands clearly, close enough to watch the specific fingering she is using, the weight distribution in her wrists, the way she shifts position subtly between passages without breaking the line of the music. He is close enough to see that this is not talent alone. Talent is a starting point. Talent is the raw material. What this girl has been built, deliberately, carefully, systematically, by someone who knew exactly what they were building and spent years doing it. He turns. He looks across the room. He finds the mother. She is watching her daughter with that same expression she has worn since she walked through the door. That quiet, certain smile that has confused everyone in the room since the moment they saw it. But Daniel Reeves is not confused by it anymore. He is a man who has spent his life in the world of serious music. He has watched parents in the front rows of competitions and recitals for 3 decades. He knows the difference between a parent who believes in their child and a parent who knows something. The mother knows something. She has always known something. The whole evening, the simple dress, the scuffed shoes, the calm walk through a room full of people laughing at her daughter, none of it was ignorance. All of it was intention. Daniel Reeves turns back toward the stage, and his expression settles into something resolute. He does not sit back down. The music has entered its final sustained passage before the climax, a long, rising sequence of chords that build on each other with gathering weight, each one slightly more intense than the last, the dynamic level rising incrementally, the tempo holding perfectly steady against the increasing pressure of the music, which is exactly the hardest thing to do, to keep perfect control as everything around you is intensifying. Most adult pianists break the tempo here. They rush. Imperceptibly, maybe half a beat, a quarter of a beat, but they rush, because the music pushes against you and you push back, and somewhere in that exchange the tempo slips. The girl does not rush. Her tempo is a metronome. Her dynamic control is absolute. And in the audience, among the people who cannot read music and cannot name a single technique they are witnessing, among the people who came to this event for the networking and the champagne and the chance to be seen, something is happening too. Because you do not need to understand music theory to understand what is in this music. You do not need to know the name of a piece to feel what it is doing inside your chest. A woman near the window has tears on her face. She has not noticed them yet. A man near the door, who was the first to laugh when the girl walked in, now has his arms folded across his chest and his jaw set and his eyes fixed on the stage with an expression that is part defiance and part shame. As if by standing straight and looking directly at what he laughed at, he can undo the laughter. He cannot. But he watches anyway. Victor Kang does not move. He stands 10 feet from the stage and he watches the girl's hands and he listens to the music, and something is working its way through him, slowly, the way cold water moves through rock. Something that has no clean name but involves equal parts wonder and weight. Because he recognizes this piece. He recognized it several minutes ago. He has been refusing to fully admit it since the moment recognition arrived, because admitting it means something he is not yet ready to confront in the middle of his charity gala in front of 60 of his closest associates. But the music will not let him not know. It is too specific. Too precise. The phrasing is too particular, the interpretive choice is too distinctive. There are 100 pianists who know this piece technically. There is perhaps one who played it like this, with this exact combination of restraint in the quiet passages and this specific weight in the chords, this particular way of letting certain notes breathe before moving forward. One person. And that person has been dead for 3 years. Victor Kang looks at the girl. He looks at the delicate architecture of her hands. He looks at the particular way her wrist curves in the lower register. He looks at her face, the smooth, focused, entirely self-contained face of a child who has no idea how much of her father she is carrying in the movement of her fingers. Or perhaps she knows exactly. Victor looks toward the mother. The mother is already looking at him. She has been watching him for several minutes. She watches him recognize it. She watches him understand. And her smile does not change. Victor's mouth opens slightly. He closes it. Something moves across his face, quick, uncontrolled, the kind of expression that a man like Victor Kang only allows in the half-second before he can stop it. He closes it down quickly. But the mother saw it. She saw it, and she nods, very slightly, barely perceptibly, as if to confirm it. Yes. You know. The music builds to its final peak. The girl's hands reach the climax of the piece. Everything that has been building, every rising chord, every gathered dynamic, every carefully maintained tempo, arrives at once in a cascading final passage that rolls across the full range of the keyboard from the lowest bass note to the highest treble with a power that seems physically impossible from a pair of hands that small. The sound fills the room completely. It fills the chandeliers and the corners and the space between tables. It fills the chest. And then it stops. The final chord rings. The girl holds it, her foot on the sustain pedal, her hand still on the keys, not lifting, not releasing. She holds it while it fades, while its resonance moves through the room in slow, diminishing waves, each one quieter than the last, until the sound is more memory than sound. And then she lifts her hands. She places them in her lap. She looks straight ahead. The room is completely silent. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then Daniel Reeves begins to clap. Not polite applause, not the careful, socially calibrated applause of a formal event. He claps with his full hands, with force, standing fully upright, facing the stage, and the sound of it breaks the silence like a stone hitting glass. And then the room erupts. It erupts all at once, not gradually, not table by table, but simultaneously, as if the applause had been held inside everyone for the last several minutes and the only thing keeping it in was the music itself, and now that the music has released them, they have no choice but to release it back. People stand. The woman with tears on her face stands, still not fully aware she has been crying. The man near the door who was the first to laugh stands with his arms unfolded now, clapping with the same hands that held his phone to record a disaster that never came. The servers along the wall stand. Even Mr. Park, the event organizer who spent the first 15 minutes of this performance quietly dreading what would happen next, stands against the wall near the entrance with his hands pressed together and something on his face that looks close to relief. The girl does not stand up immediately. She sits at the piano for a moment with her hands in her lap. She blinks. She looks at the keys. Then, slowly, she turns and looks at the room. She looks at the people standing and clapping. She looks at Daniel Reeves, standing closest to the stage, clapping with the kind of conviction that has ended careers and launched them. She looks, finally, at her mother. Her mother smiles at her. Not the mysterious, knowing smile she has held all evening, something warmer now, something that belongs only to the two of them, a private signal that says, "You did it, and I always knew you would." The girl slides off the piano bench. She stands on the low stage. She looks down at her slightly scuffed shoes. And then, quietly, without having been told to, without performance, she curtsies. It is the most devastating thing that has happened in this room all evening. A 10-year-old girl in a simple blue dress curtsying on a stage that was never meant for her, in a room full of people who laughed when she walked in, accepting applause with a grace that none of them have managed to demonstrate all evening. The applause intensifies. Victor Kang does not applaud. He stands. He has not moved from the spot where he stopped, 10 feet from the stage. He watches the room applaud. He watches Daniel Reeves step closer to the stage. He watches the girl look at her mother. He watches the mother's face shift from its public composure into something private and warm and fully human. And then Victor Kang walks forward. He walks toward the mother. Not toward the stage. Not toward the girl. Toward the mother. The crowd parts for him as always, but this time it feels different, not because he is more powerful than before, but because something in the way he is walking has changed. He is not moving with the deliberate, performative authority that he usually carries like a weapon. He is moving with something quieter than that. He reaches her. They stand facing each other. She is slightly taller than he expected, close up. Her composure, near to, is something he can feel rather than simply observe. It radiates from her the way heat radiates from a surface that has been warmed slowly, over a long time, from the inside. He looks at her for a moment without speaking. Then he says, low enough that only she can hear it, "What is her name?" "Amara," the mother says. "And yours?" A pause. "Nadia." Another pause. Victor exhales slowly through his nose. His eyes move briefly back to the stage, where Amara is now shaking Daniel Reeves' hand, the old pianist crouching slightly to meet her at her height, speaking to her with great seriousness, the way one musician speaks to another regardless of age. "Her father," Victor says. He does not finish the sentence. Nadia watches her daughter. "His name was Marcus," she says. Victor says nothing. "Marcus Owens," Nadia says. The name lands in Victor Kang's chest like something physical. He does not flinch. He has spent 40 years learning not to flinch. But something happens in his face, a tightening, a stillness, that is its own kind of flinch. "Marcus Owens," he repeats. Very quietly. "You remember him," Nadia says. It is not a question. Victor looks at her directly. "I remember him." "Then you remember what happened to him." The room around them is still filled with noise, the settling applause, the beginning of conversation, the sound of chairs, glasses, the ordinary sounds of a party resuming. But between Victor and Nadia there is a pocket of quiet so complete that the noise around it might as well not exist. Victor does not answer immediately. Nadia waits. She is good at waiting. She has been waiting for this moment longer than anyone in this room knows. "He was brilliant," Victor says finally. "He was," Nadia agrees. "My company withdrew from the contract," he says. "It was a business decision." "It ended his career," Nadia says. Her voice is steady. There is no rage in it. There is something more controlled than rage, the particular steadiness of someone who has had years to decide exactly what they want to say and how they want to say it. "He couldn't get another booking," she continues. "Not after your company withdrew. No one would take a risk on him after that. You know how the industry works. If Com doesn't believe in you, no one does." Victor is silent. "He spent 2 years trying," Nadia says. "He never stopped playing. He taught Amara everything he knew. He recorded 3 new compositions that no one ever heard. And then the stress, the uncertainty, it took his health." She pauses. "He died 2 years ago. Amara was 8. Victor's jaw tightens. "He died before anyone outside this family ever heard what he could really do," Nadia says. "So tonight." She pauses. "Tonight, they heard it." Victor does not speak for a long time. When he finally does, his voice is different from any voice he has used all evening. It is lower. Less constructed. "Why here?" he asks. "Why my event?" Nadia looks at him calmly. "Because you were there at the beginning," she says. "I wanted you to be there for this." Victor Kang stands in the middle of his ballroom. The chandeliers still throw their gold light across everything. The guests are still moving, still talking, still holding their champagne. The room looks exactly as it did an hour ago. But something has shifted in it irrevocably. The way a room shifts after someone says something in it that cannot be unsaid. Victor looks at Nadia for a long moment. Then he turns and looks at Amara, who is still at the front of the room near the stage, still speaking with Daniel Reeves, her head tilted to one side in the particular way children hold their heads when they are listening to something important. Victor walks toward her. The room notices. Conversations pause again. People turn to watch. Whatever is about to happen next, they want to see it. An hour ago they came to this gala to be seen. Now they are watching something real, and that is rarer in rooms like this than anything on the event program. Victor approaches the stage. He approaches Amara. Daniel Reeves straightens up from his slight crouch and steps back, not far, but enough. He is a man who understands moments, and this is one. Victor and Amara look at each other. She is 10 years old. She is wearing a blue dress with a white ribbon in her hair. She is standing on a stage in a room that laughed at her less than 2 hours ago, and she looks at Victor Kang with the steady, unintimidated gaze of a child who has been told exactly who she is and has never had reason to doubt it. Victor is 61 years old. He has more money than most small countries. He has crushed competitors and silenced critics and built an empire on the principle that the world belongs to those who take it. And he looks at this 10-year-old girl with a look in his eyes that is entirely unfamiliar to the people in this room who have known him for decades. He looks humbled. Not defeated. Not broken. But humbled, the specific look of a powerful person who has been made to understand, without argument or confrontation, that there are things more powerful than power. He crouches slightly, the way Daniel Reeves did. "Your name is Amara," he says. "Yes," she says. "That was extraordinary," he says. She looks at him evenly. "Thank you." "Did you know," Victor says, carefully, "who was in this room when you played?" Amara considers this. "My mom told me that the man who owns the piano would be here," she says. Victor pauses. "Just that?" "She said the piano deserved to be played properly," Amara says. "So I played it properly." Victor is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "She was right." He straightens. He stands fully upright. He turns to face the room that is watching him, waiting, uncertain of what it is witnessing but unwilling to look away. He is quiet for a moment. Then he speaks. Not loudly. He doesn't need to speak loudly. The room is that silent. 15 years ago, Victor Kang says, I made a decision that I told myself was purely about business. I withdrew support from a musician. A remarkable musician. And I told myself that the music world is competitive, and these things happen, and it was not personal. No one in the room moves. His name was Marcus Owens, Victor says. Most of you won't know that name. He never got the chance to make sure you would. He pauses. His daughter just played his compositions on my piano. Victor looks at Amara. I want everyone in this room, he says, to understand what they heard tonight. Not a child prodigy performing a party trick. Not an unexpected guest causing a disruption. He stops. You heard a legacy. You heard everything a man poured into his daughter when the world refused to let him pour it anywhere else. You heard 15 years of work that should have been heard 15 years ago. The room is completely still. I should have listened then, Victor says. He looks at Nadia, who is standing at the edge of the crowd. I am sorry. Nadia receives this. She does not perform forgiveness. She does not perform emotion. She simply receives it, the way she has received everything tonight, with stillness and with dignity. He's listening now, she says quietly. And somehow, in this room of chandeliers and champagne and $20,000 tables, those three words carry more weight than everything else that has been said all evening. Victor turns back to the room. For the first time tonight, he says, and his voice carries something genuine now, something that has perhaps not lived in his voice for a very long time, let us applaud real talent. Then Daniel Reeves begins clapping first. And then the room follows. And this time the applause is different from the applause after the performance. That applause was shock releasing itself. This applause is something else. This applause is the sound of 60 people who walked into a room tonight believing they already understood the world, being shown that they did not, and choosing, in this particular moment, to be grateful for it. Amara stands on the stage. She looks at the room. She looks at her mother. Nadia is clapping too. And her face, the face that has carried that quiet, knowing, unshakable smile through every moment of this evening, has opened into something wider and fuller. Not just confidence now. Not just certainty. But joy. The particular joy of a person who carried something heavy across a very long distance and has finally set it down exactly where they always meant to put it. She looks at her daughter. Her daughter looks back at her. "Why here?" he asks. "Why my event?" Nadia looks at him calmly. "Because you were there at the beginning," she says. "I wanted you to be there for this." And in that exchange, in that small, private, entirely human moment between a mother and a daughter in the middle of a ballroom full of people, every question the evening began with finds its answer. Why was she smiling when everyone was laughing? Because she knew. She has always known. She knew what her daughter was carrying inside her. She knew what Marcus had given Amara in those last years, not just musical knowledge, not just technique, but something that cannot be taught, the understanding that who you are is not defined by the rooms that refuse to let you in. It is defined by what you do when they finally open the door. And Victor Kang opened that door as a joke. And a little girl in a blue dress walked through it and played her father's music and changed every single person in that room, not loudly, not with argument, not with confrontation, but with her hands on the keys and her father's music in her fingers and her mother's certainty running through her spine like iron. In the weeks that follow, the story spreads. A guest posted a video. Then another. Then a third, filmed from a different angle, capturing the exact moment Victor Kang's face changed, the precise frame, the precise second the laughter left and something real arrived in its place. Daniel Reeves gave an interview in which he said, without qualification, that Amara Owens was the most naturally gifted young pianist he had encountered in 40 years of professional music. He said that her father's compositions, the ones she played that night, were works of genuine genius, and that it was a tragedy and a scandal that they had never been recorded or performed publicly. Within a month, a recording deal was offered for Amara. Within 2 months, a major arts foundation committed to funding the posthumous release of Marcus Owens' compositions, 3 full albums worth of original work, recorded from his personal manuscripts, performed by Amara and a chamber ensemble. The albums were called, simply, He Was Listening. Victor Kang made a substantial donation to the project. He attended the first concert. He sat in the front row. He did not speak to anyone before the performance. He arrived alone, sat alone, listened alone. When Amara walked onto the stage, older now, taller, wearing a white dress this time, she paused when she saw him there. She looked at him. He looked at her. And then she sat down at the piano and played her father's music. And this time there was no laughter at the beginning. Only silence. And then music. And then everything it deserved. Nadia sat in the wings that night, watching from the side of the stage. She did not need to be in the front row. She did not need to be seen. She had been waiting for this for a long time, not with desperation or bitterness, but with the specific, steady patience of someone who knows that the truth does not disappear simply because the world is not ready for it yet. She watched her daughter play. And she smiled. That same smile. Quiet. Certain. Knowing. Because she had always known. From the moment Marcus first placed Amara's tiny hands on the keys of their upright piano at home, the one with the sticky middle C and the missing sustained pedal pad, and said, "Watch her, Nadia. Just watch her." She had always known. And now, finally, so did everyone else. If this story moved you, if Amara's performance gave you chills, if Nadia's quiet strength stayed with you, if Marcus's legacy reached you the way it was always meant to, then do not leave quietly. Hit that like button right now and let this story find the people who need it. Subscribe, so that when the next story arrives, the next impossible moment, the next person underestimated by everyone who should have known better, you are there from the very beginning. And in the comments, answer this honestly: when has someone underestimated you, and what did you do next? Because your story matters too. And we want to hear it. Why here? He asks. Why my event? Nadia looks at him calmly. Because you were there at the beginning, she says. I wanted you to be there for this.